The new Microsoft Surface Go pitted against the slightly more affordable Apple iPad 9.7 is a fascinating comparison. While there is some overlap, each excels in their own way. Which is the best depends on what you expect it to do. With that in mind, today we're going to do a quick showdown with both. Stay tuned. When it comes to size comparisons between these two devices, well, they're very similar. Technically though, Surface Go will be a little bit larger and a little bit heavier. Specifically, Surface Go comes in at 1.15 pounds, that's 520 kilograms, whereas the iPad 9.7 is going to be 1.03 pounds and 469 grams. In terms of thinness, well, they're both extremely thin. In fact, you'd need to bust out some calipers, but actually the iPad is going to be slightly thinner at 7.5 millimeter versus 8.3 millimeter for Surface Go. In the hand though, they both feel very similar. That weight and size difference is really negligible at this size. When it comes to biometrics, you do get Windows Hello facial recognition on the Surface Go, and it works very well, including in portrait mode, as you can see here, or any orientation you want. iPad 9.7, meanwhile, has a fingerprint reader on the home button on the display. Now, one of the more interesting distinctions between these two devices will be the displays. Apple always kills it with their displays. Very good stuff. This is a 9.7-inch LED backlit. It is multi-touch, and it does support their pencil, which is a new feature this year. Now, that display is 2048 by 1536. Gives you a pixel per inch of 264. It's an amazing display. Not as quite as good as the iPad Pros, but still, you gotta envy Apple. They really nail it. Turning to the Surface Go, we have a true 10-inch display, which is a change from Surface 3, which is 10.8-inch, so a little bit smaller. 3:2 aspect ratio versus the 4:3 that Apple uses. 1800 by 1200 resolution, so slightly less resolution, and that's gonna give you a pixel per inch of 216 versus the 264 found on Apple. Very good display though, really no complaint, and it does work with the Surface Pen, and that's exactly what we want. Brightness on these devices are both very similar too. I would rate these displays both as very good. Apple though does have a little bit better anti-reflection, but it is really a minor difference. All right, now looking at the front of the device, a lot has been made about the Surface Go's bezels. It's being large, but as you can see, compared to my thumb, and maybe I have fat fingers, I don't know, don't judge me, but it fits perfectly, and that's kind of what it's meant for holding it like this, and you don't touch the display accidentally. It's also very even across, right? So it's a very symmetrical bezel, and it gives you a really nice aspect ratio. I'm perfectly fine with it, considering how small this device is. Now when it comes to the bezels, iPad does things a little bit differently. Yes, you have very thin bezels on the top and bottom, but that's offset by these large bezels on the side. So that's gonna be a trade-off. Plus you have this weird aspect ratio. Well, I don't wanna say weird. It's a really nice aspect ratio for tablets, but if you're gonna be watching movies that are widescreen, well, you're gonna get a big cutoff here for black bars, and so that's gonna affect the viewing experience. Now I wanna talk a little bit about holding the iPad in this orientation. I think most people will hold it like this, but increasingly more users are using this orientation as people try to make this device more productive. And there are trade-offs, especially when you attach a keyboard to this, which is you have the home button and fingerprint reader on this side, which is a little strange. And you have the web camera, the front-facing one, which is 1.2 megapixel over here on the side, which is a little weird for Skype calls. I should also mention, although you have two stereo speakers on the side here, or on the bottom, I should say, they're very good speakers, but they're only going to fire from this side, which does not give you a front-facing stereo effect. Now, the other issue with the iPad is, well, I'm holding it, and if I don't want to hold it and use it, the device falls flat. Literally, there's no kickstand built into this, so you have to buy an accessory to make that happen. Otherwise, you have to look at it this way, or you're going to go to a pure hands experience. Now, when using Surface Go in this orientation, it actually works pretty well. You have the pencil on top. Now, on this version, you do have the camera on the side for here, power and volume buttons on the side, which is kind of nice, and your speakers are now top and bottom. However, Surface Go is mostly going to be used in this orientation, which makes everything front-facing and really nice. You have your web camera now this way, which if you're going to be using this as a laptop primarily, well, it's going to be a better experience. You also get that nice Surface Pen experience where it sticks to the side with very strong magnets, I might add, and that's kind of cool too. Now, although the Surface Go may be slightly thicker and slightly heavier than the iPad, you do get this nifty kickstand, which really does change the experience for a lot of users, including using it in tablet mode, as you no longer need to hold the device and you can use it at all angles. All right, so far we've been comparing and contrasting the different hardware experiences between the Surface Go and the iPad 9.7, and they're pretty similar in some ways, they just do it differently. Where the iPad though will excel will be in that tablet OS experience. Let's face it, Apple's OS is just a better tablet. That's because it's a mobile operating system, it's very fast, it's very fluid, and those gestures just work very well. Okay, adding a keyboard to these devices greatly changes things. As you can see, Surface Go has this Alcantara keyboard option. Now it is extra $130, though there is a $99 option as well. And it just attaches to the device through magnetic connectors at the bottom. And you can see just folds out and you get that kickstand. Very fast, very fluid, and it's very clean. It's just a really nice experience. When it comes to the iPad 9.7, not the Pro, you do not get those pogo connectors on the bottom, which means you have a Bluetooth keyboard experience. Here we're using the Logitech keyboard, which is one of the more popular ones. It's pretty clever. As you can see, when you do this, it connects up to it and turns on, and it mostly works pretty well, but it is definitely a lot more clumsy. You also have this giant clamshell case, which, while offering protection, especially good for students, is not very elegant looking and really distracts from the elegance that is the iPad 9.7. All right, when it comes to the typing experience, as you can see, Surface Go has this nicely articulated keyboard that gives you a nice angle to type on, whereas, well, the iPad doesn't quite have that at all. It just lays flat. You also don't get an area for your wrists. I can't stress this enough how important this is for putting your hands on while typing versus having them hang off the edge. It's just not nearly as comfortable. And do I need to point out there's also a missing trackpad? The iPad does not support trackpad or a mouse, which is really unfortunate because you do have to constantly touch the screen in order to basically operate anything on it, whereas the Surface Go gives you both options. You can touch the screen or you can rely on the trackpad or bring a Bluetooth mouse. Working in favor of the Surface Go is it doesn't require power to work. That is, it doesn't need its own battery. It's also backlit, which is really nice to have, versus the iPad's Logitech keyboard here, which is not backlit and requires batteries, which could run out because it is Bluetooth. If you're into inking and writing on your computer, well, both of these devices will satisfy you, just in different ways. iPad, of course, has its iPad Pencil, which is pretty huge compared to the Surface Pro Pen. It's very long, and let's just tease Apple with this goofy solution for keeping it charged. And yes, you do need to charge this every once in a while, as it does use battery, and you stick that to the bottom of it. Hopefully you won't snap it off. There is no buttons on it, it's just a single device. The writing experience on it is actually pretty decent. I don't really have that many complaints about it, but I am going to go in favor of the Surface Pen, at least the newer $99 one, which has a few buttons on it, which is really nice. You can also use the eraser or assign that as a pen click to whatever option you want. It comes in various colors, it's fully magnetic and sticks to the side, and its battery will last you at least a whole year. You can also replace the nubs with ease, and you have a few buttons here on the side as well. In terms of which one is better, well, I'm no artist, so that's kind of hard to judge, but in our lab test here, we did a Windows Central. We found the Surface Pro Pen just had a little bit less lag than the Apple Pencil. It was more comfortable to use. Your mileage may vary. Let's just say they're both good pens though. Let's talk power, performance, battery life, and pricing. So both of these devices are priced similarly, although the iPad is going to be cheaper. So it starts at $329 versus $399 for Surface Go. Neither one of those include a keyboard or the pen or pencil, so it's gonna be extra cost as well. Now, if you're to match them in specs for storage, both 128 gigs, well, the iPad now jumps to $429, but the Surface Go jumps to $550. That makes the iPad technically a better value, although that depends on what you're planning on doing with it. If you're just gonna use a tablet experience, the iPad is obviously going to be the better choice. If, however, you ever want to use a full office, you're going to want to use the Surface Go. Now, for performance-wise, it's going to be difficult to measure. Apple has that A10 processor, which, let's give them some credit here, is a very powerful processor, and they've been doing great in that area. The Surface Go, meanwhile, is powered by the Pentium, and it's an okay processor. It is literally twice as fast as a Surface 3's Atom processor and gets very good graphics performance, but still not going to be a super powerful one. It handles the OS nicely, but in terms of just the overall experience, well, iOS is going to be a little bit more fluid when compared to running Windows 10. For battery life and instant on, again, the iPad is going to win here. It gets very good battery life, and you can turn it off and, like your cell phone, leave it off for weeks at a time and still come back to a fully charged battery. Well, when it comes to Surface Go, it's not quite as optimized, so you will need to charge this probably at least once a week if you're not using it at all. In terms of actual battery life, we're talking between 8 and 10 hours, although we need to do more testing. But so far, Microsoft's expectations at around 9 hours does seem accurate. Okay, so which one of these devices is better? Well, it depends on your expectations. Microsoft and Apple are both starting from different endpoints, but trying to reach the same center. That is, a one device that can kind of do it all. Now, Apple starts from a mobile operating system and a tablet experience, and they're trying to make it into a PC, where Microsoft is starting from a desktop situation and trying to go mobile. And they both have compromises because of that. Now, which one you prefer? Well, depends on what you want to do with it. If you're a student in school, well, the Surface Go may be a little bit better if you plan on using full Office. I should also mention that being a real PC here, the Surface Go can just do more stuff. Sure, both these devices can game, and you can actually get some very good games on the iPad, but if you want to use an Xbox controller, well, it's going to be this device, the Surface Go. There's also just plugging in stuff. So because the Surface Go has a Type-C port, you can plug in a lot of peripherals to it, including hubs and docks, which then expand things. So you can add an Ethernet port, you can add SD card, all without spending extra money. When it comes to the iPad, you're going to have to get a converter dongle first for the Lightning port, because that's the only port on board. And then you got to carry around a bunch of other stuff with you. It's a little more troublesome with the iPad. You're going to get more support when it comes to a real PC. I should also mention that the iPad has LTE right now, where Surface Go is getting it in a couple months, so that's going to be a decision factor for some of you as well. So when it comes to these devices, they are both the best from Apple and Microsoft, and they're very good devices for their respective categories, but they're going to have different usage scenarios for each individual. I prefer Surface Go, as I tend to write on it and use emails, and that's going to be a bigger factor for me. Plus, I really like having trackpad support, mouse support, and being able to connect up my peripherals to it. Whereas the iPad, let's face it, is just a really good tablet. It just falls down as soon as you want to try and make it a PC. It's really not a good experience in my opinion, but your standards may be different. Hopefully this video, though, will help show you the differences between the two and help you in your buying decision. Now, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. If you want more tips on the Surface Go, make sure you watch this channel or head to windowscentral.com. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody.